This is editing Rob. Sorry, I sound like I'm asleep. I don't know why in this audio. I felt like I was emoting a lot, but apparently I wasn't. Sorry for that. I'm just gonna put some music under the video. At the end of the video, I'm going to put a few pictures that I made during the first lockdown, just because everything was so weird and ghostly and things were kind of transitioning and people were actually still adhering to government advice, which they're not anymore, unfortunately. But yeah, the whole craziness and weirdness of the first lockdown is basically at the end of the video, just a little bit of a slideshow, basically. So stay with me or skip to the end, whatever you want to. Hi and welcome back to Finally Rob. Today we are going to look back at 2020, a year that will be stuck in people's minds forever and that will, without a doubt, go into history. For me, the year started sick. I'm sick a lot, but I got so sick that I almost did not make it. How did it get this bad? Well, let me tell you. I had been sick on and off since November 2019. But just after the holiday season, it was getting really bad, really fast. Whatever I had at first was already taking all my energy. I was at the point still going to work. Why? Because I always go to work. If I stay at home every time I get sick, I can work from home half the year. This was no different from any time before. I was coughing, my sinuses weren't acting up, my lungs were starting to get really bad. I have really bad lungs, and so everything immediately hits my lungs, and I get bad lung infections generally twice a year. And during this time, I will be on several strong medications, and they will help. Not this year. I remember several times sitting at my desk at work coughing so hard that I had to fight passing out, so hard that I got dizzy and needed a few minutes to collect myself. It was so bad that my team lead took me aside twice asking if I wanted to take sick time off work or work from home. I was naive. I said no, it just sounds bad, it's not that bad. I went to my GP every other week for a while. My GP kept telling me that I was on the mend because I had no fever and she couldn't hear anything in my lungs. She even said that when I told her that I had no more energy to cough. She even said that when I told her that I had to be on all fours to cough because in no other way did it clear my airways. She smiled and said, "Oh." And then she sent me back home with yet another antibiotic that wasn't going to help. At the start of January, I had heard about the spread of this new virus in China. I was in awe watching this guy on YouTube traveling through China into the parts of the country that were in full lockdown. People had to install apps on their phones to track exposure. Every part of the country had checkpoints. You would have to have your temperature taken before entering certain places. Everybody wore face masks, and the streets of this extremely busy and buzzing country were empty. At this time, I started following what was happening and slowly found the virus spread across the planet. I watched doctors speak about the most current information about the virus, about safety measures. I learned about one country after another going into lockdown. Around mid-February, my cough was getting so bad that I was not sleeping through a single night any longer. I would wake up in the middle of the night, not able to breathe. I had now also lost my sense of smell and most of my sense of taste. Are your alarm bells ringing? Mine weren't. At the time, we didn't know all the symptoms, and nobody would ever test me because I did not have a fever. The fact that I never get a fever because my immune system doesn't fight didn't matter. I had no fever, and so I did not get tested at the time. Would I have been tested? I'm sure I would have tested positive. Would I have assessed my own situation properly? I would have gone to the hospital, but I thought it's just a really bad cold, maybe even a flu. By the end of February, I had to call in sick. I had now switched to a new GP who finally listened to me and checked me properly. He prescribed me a ton of medication, from steroids for my lungs to doubling my dose of my everyday inhaler, to a bunch of additional medications and more. He loaded me up on so many medications that I had medicine for breakfast. I spent a week in bed. I got up for the toilet and for the occasional meal. Other than that, I slept, watched TikTok, slept a bit more. The week was a blur. I finally allowed my body to rest and heal. After this, my team lead explained that at work they had started putting some precautions in place. Nobody who was sick or weakened was allowed into the office. I started working from home 2 weeks before the office closed, and everybody was sent to work from home for safety reasons. Ireland entered the first lockdown, and my roommates and I started piling up foods, just buying some extra with every visit to the supermarket. We did not go crazy on toilet paper, but we were very surprised about how crazy people went over it. Once the lockdown was announced, we had already made sure that we were covered for groceries for a few weeks. With me and one more high-risk patient living together, we decided that we were going to be super cautious. Come in and wash your hands thoroughly before touching anything, even before closing the door behind you. I was finally getting much better, and the isolation in our little bubble helped my body to heal and become functional again. Italy had been in lockdown before us, and now it was our time. I watched people on YouTube working out on their balconies with their neighbors, partying with one neighbor DJing, and people dancing in their windows, people playing music out of the windows for neighbors to listen. It was amazing to see how people in lockdown were now closer than ever before. It was this community across the world supporting each other. But while I was getting healthier again, I looked at my testosterone gel. At this time, I was on Tostron gel. My endocrinologist likes to prescribe that at first because ramping up into a normal dose is easier when you can pump it and therefore dose it perfectly. But I was getting to the end of what I had, and my pharmacy had given me the last one in stock. They were trying to order more for me, but told me they were not able to. I was so scared that I would run out completely and basically detransition. I talked to a lot of friends who were happy to ask in their pharmacies for me. I kept walking around to pharmacies I could reach. Tostron gel was nowhere to be found, and nobody was able to order it in. Online, I found a list stating what was out of stock and when it would come back into stock. Mine had no date. It was just out and nobody knew when it would come back into Ireland. I talked to my mom, who went and asked at her pharmacy in Germany. Luckily, her pharmacy agreed to send me some, so I sent my prescription, transferred them the money, and they gave it to my mom, who sent it to me. After 2 weeks, the package had still not arrived, and I was starting to get worried. I was considering to lowering my dose of tea to stretch it. I calculated that the way I was going to lower it, I could stretch it to 40 days, hoping that at this point it would be possible to order it again. I got in touch with the post office but never heard back. Another week later, the package arrived. It had been opened and checked, probably because of the fact that there was medicine in the package. I could finally breathe. I was now covered on my normal dose at the time for another 2 months, but as the lockdown got lowered and Ireland moved into the phased approach, Tostron gel was still not in stock and could not be ordered, so I started to worry again. What now? At work, we started having these half-hour check-ins via video conference. They were a substitute for not being able to hang out over lunch or coffee. During one of those check-ins, I spoke about my worry because of the hormone shortages. I knew of another gel that was actually in stock and could be ordered, but I had no prescription for it. I just laid it all out there because I needed to speak it out, and my team was very kind. One of my teammates messaged me later and told me the one thing that I had not thought about. He told me to speak to my GP. So I called my GP and asked him if he would be able to switch me to the other gel, tested gel, the one most FTM guys know. Tested gel around here comes in 50 microgram sachets, but I was supposed to be on 40 at the time. I wasn't able to reach my endocrinologist. My appointment was for April, had been cancelled due to coronavirus, and the practice was closing for the time being. She called me back once, telling me that my prescription was extended for now. Well, lucky my GP was able to help me there. By the end of April, I dosed up to the full sachet. I do not condone doing this for other people, of course, but I knew I would be on 50 at some point, and probably this would have been put in place by the end of April, so I dosed up and it felt normal and good. My daily routine at this point was sleeping until 15 minutes before my shift at work started, make coffee, sit down and work, then spend more time on the PC until it was time for bed. I kept in touch with people online. For a while I did weekly Netflix watch parties to watch Sense8 with friends. We were done pretty much when the first lockdown was over. Around May or June I got in touch with a surgeon as I was trying to find somebody for top surgery. At first I had tried to find one in Ireland but couldn't. Then I looked at Germany, which is where I'm from, and England, which is where my bestie is from. I wanted to make sure that wherever I go for my top surgery I was going to have support in the 1 or 2 weeks after. In Germany, none of the hospitals replied, and I didn't find one in England that I liked in particular. After that, I looked at the US. I was zeroing in on Dr. Gallagher, who is originally from Ireland and now working in the US. She has an amazing attitude, knowledge, and results. I was about to get in touch, knowing well how expensive this would be, trip, accommodation, surgery costs combined, when a friend told me about another surgeon in Greece. So I wrote to the one in Greece and very quickly received a reply. We had a couple of emails back and forth. I sent him pictures of my chest for a brief assessment, and then we had a Skype call. He was very kind and warm and answered every question I had. Shortly after, we set a surgery date, and I created a fundraiser as I knew I wouldn't be able to save up enough this fast. The date was set for January 19th, 2021. Even during the pandemic, I was set to get the surgery done. The fundraiser went well for the first few days and then became very quiet. I pushed it one more time on my social media in November, and a bit more donations trickled in. GoFundMe themselves sent me a donation, which made me extremely happy and I felt supported. This video is not sponsored, but I have to say that I haven't had a single bad interaction with this company before or after their donation to my campaign. The support was always swift and kind whenever I had a question, and the setup overall was really simple steps. Anyway, during this time I looked at my finances and tried to think about a good plan on how to finance this if I did not reach the goal in the fundraiser. I came to the conclusion I would have to try to save even better, and at the end of it all ask the bank to top up my personal credit along with me maxing out my credit card. Scary, but I was going to do it because the surgery is not up for negotiation. It needs to happen. At work I spoke to my manager in HR to make sure I booked this time off correctly and know everything I need to know on that end. Finally, I was going to book the flights and found out that there were no more direct flights, and the few flights that were going there had 1 or 2 stops with up to 12 hours of waiting time, and at the end the flights were only possible on very specific dates, which was going to get me stranded along the way for several days to get another flight, ending me up at a solid €780 of only flight with a small bag to and from Greece. Adding the accommodation and surgery costs, I was not going to be able to pay for all that even with the fundraising. So I ended up calling off the surgery for January, as there was no point with seeing flights being cancelled left and right along with the dangers of traveling during the pandemic. So back to saving it was. While I couldn't get the surgery at the time I wanted to, it did give me time to raise more funds and save more. During the last 2 weeks of 2020, my friend then went into a hunger strike. This was due to the horrendous healthcare situation for trans people in Ireland. So while I would not do a hunger strike myself, I did want to do my part to support her. I published her open letter on my website, helped contact papers, and so on. Unfortunately, I did not see the trans community here support her, which was extremely disappointing, but it's also a matter for another video. Now, I did think I was going to spend Christmas by myself, but then a friend asked if I wanted to come over for a drink. We live in the same house, so that was a nice evening. Next day, a friend asked if I wanted to have Christmas dinner with her and her roommates, so I did that as well. I do understand that it's a pandemic, but I have been self-isolating since March 2020, whether the country was or wasn't in lockdown, because I am a high-risk patient. However, I trust her, and it was wonderful, and I did not catch COVID during that. Then just before New Year's, another friend ended up in the hospital with some sort of stroke, so I had him put me on speed dial. I'm a first aid responder and live across the street, so I wanted to make sure that if anything happens again, he has somebody nearby. He's okay now, but at least he doesn't have to wait for an ambulance during a pandemic to get first aid, as I can provide first aid and call the ambulance as I do so. And that brings us to finally the new year. Let's face it, overall 2020 was a big fat shit show, and I'm glad to be one of the people who made it through the year relatively unharmed. I will try to bring out more content on this channel, and I am planning and preparing a cooking channel as well right now. We'll get you more information on that once I start the channel. Currently, I'm preparing videos and planning a schedule to make sure I run both channels well, hoping for a video per week per channel, which would mean overall 3 videos a week. If I take the gaming one more serious, I might just download some of my older videos and upload them to a new channel and take it from there. We will see. Anyway, thanks for watching my 2020 look back video. Let's hope that 2021 will be better, and have a great January. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell button to get a notification whenever I upload. Bye. Hey there, Editing Rob is back. Enjoy the pictures that I promised in the beginning of the first weirdness and craziness and eeriness of the first lockdown in Ireland, around where I was living at the time.